Hi, Sarah. Can you hear us okay?
I can, Katie, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order a council meeting of August 12th, 2024. Can everyone please rise for the national anthem?
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton brasse porter le pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none, can I have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Freg, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Freg, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the August 12th, 2024 council meeting agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have chair's reports. Councillor DeFlavio, Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. It was a fairly brief meeting. There was an annual RQMS infrastructure review report. We also dealt with some parking issues and parking recommendations on Baker Road North. The committee had a lengthy discussion about the ongoing parking situation near the hospital. Since the town is in the middle of a review, we thought that it would be best to approve the parking restrictions along Baker Road North, but to put a moratorium, a kind of a pause on future parking restrictions within the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital neighborhood until the ongoing transportation master plan can be completed. So obviously, if there's an urgent safety issue that needs to be dealt with, we'll deal with it. But until then, unless that occurs, we want to wait for the entire study to be completed before we deal with a one-by-one basis. It's probably a better use of staff's time that way as well. There were also questions regarding the storm during the week of July 15th and whether there were any urgent issues. There was an update regarding future water main projects. a discussion about high-risk trees, residents wishing to donate and help plant trees. We talked a little bit about the transportation master plan and the infiltration study that's going on right now. So people might have noticed that they're bubbling coming out because of the smoke that was put in the lines. I've gotten some feedback about that, but there's nothing to be worried about. So that's about it for that meeting, Your Worship. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. There will be further Public Works discussion later on in the meeting tonight because we're going to be talking about a couple of specific items. So those are probably the ones that people will have issue with.
Great. Thank you, Councillor DeFlavio. Up next, we have Councillor Charwa. Can you give your report on the Community Services Committee?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan. So the Community Services Committee met on July 23rd. We had a delegation from David Kelly, who is a resident representing the group Grimsby Residents for Fair Pickleball Play. The basic ask was for a review of the agreement with the current Grimsby Pickleball Association. They were asking for more free time for the public. When I had asked which times they were most wanting to free up, it seemed as though weeknights and weekends were the ones that we were, trying to figure out. So staff is reassessing the situation, and I've asked that Community Services Committee are kept in the loop about potential amendments before this comes back. And we should be discussing this at our next meeting on September 25th. The second item I wanted to mention was that there was a report that came back from my motion regarding lights in the parks. That was from April 23rd. So staff came back and they said that they had reached out to Niagara Regional Police with respect to any neighborhoods experiencing a high degree of unwanted behaviors and crime. And they've confirmed that the consultant team with the Parks Master Plan will be taking this all into consideration for their upcoming plan. And the last one was also a report based on my motion regarding shoreline protection from the March 26th council meeting or committee meeting. The motion asked staff to report on the state of the shorelines for Whitaker, Murray, and Nellis Beach Parks and any proactive measures we can take to protect these lands. Staff reported for Whitaker Park that they will have a report to the council in the next few months to guide decisions around improvements for Whitaker Park and the areas in the Pump House Pier. And with Nellis Beach Park, staff have allocated resources in 2025 to initiate design and study work. Depending on workload and budget outcomes, this timeline may get modified. So they recognize the importance of the projects and look forward to advancing the work forward. And I just wanted to note that I briefly spoke to MPP Sam Oosterhoff about some of these concerns, and he did forward me a grant opportunity to look into, and I passed it on to the director, to Director Sweeney as well. So our next meeting is scheduled for September 25th.
Thank you, Councillor Charwa. Up next, I chaired the Planning and Development Committee meeting on August 7th, 2024. We had a couple of reports, PA 2419, 502 Winston Road, abeyance, just receiving it for information. The Ontario Land Tribunal decision for 4 Windward Drive, received for information. And we had an application draft subdivision for 2 Slessor Boulevard. That was received. And accessible parking discussion that was also received for information. And we adjourned after 9 minutes, and the next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. Thank you. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the previous minutes? Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the following minutes be approved. Council, July 8th, 2024. Special Council, July 22nd, 2024. Public Works Committee, July 22nd, 2024. Community Services Committee, July 23rd, 2024. And Planning and Development Committee, August 7th, 2024. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for the Heritage Committee's council endorsement package? Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Are there any questions? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Corsangi, second by Councillor DeFlavio, resolved that the council endorsement package for the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee dated August 12, 2024 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Can I get a mover and seconder for the Grimsby Green Council endorsement package? Councillor Vardy, Councillor Corstangi. Yeah, are there any questions on the Green Committee?
Is someone willing to put forward the amendment to include staff's recommendation?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we have someone willing to put forward the amendment for the invasive species management action plan to put it on the 2025 budget. Councillor Vardy?
Thank you, I'm fine with that. So, to make a friendly amendment for that then, or?
All right, since council seems to be in agreement on that, we can just read the resolution and the action is noted. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Corstangi. Resolved that the staff memorandum regarding invasive species management action plan be received and the council endorsement package for the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee dated August 12, 2024 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for the receipt of board minutes? Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the following minutes be received. Joint Fire Services Advisory Committee, September 21st, 2023. Grimsby Downtown BIA, June 12th, 2024. Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, July 9th, 2024. Grimsby Downtown BIA, July 10th, 2024. Committee of Adjustment, July 16th, 2024. Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, July 17th, 2024. All in favor? That's carried. Are there any announcements tonight? Councillor Bradsey.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I just wanted to announce that I attended the ambassador training for Jillian's Place for the Walk a Mile in her shoes, and we'll be putting forward a Town of Grimsby team for the walk on October 18th. So look forward to that. I'll be sending the link forward, and we've already met the minimum threshold for fundraising, and let's hope we can win a trophy.
Any other announcements? I just have one. I just was able on Civic Holiday Monday, I was able to go to Port Colborne and was able to take the Empire Sandy, the tall ship, out into a quite rough Lake Ontario. And thank you very much, Mayor Steele of Port Colborne. We all had fun, but we didn't get to talk to everyone quite as much because people seemed to be holding on to the rails. Any other announcements? Seeing none, Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I feel like I'm the only one talking here tonight. This has been quite a quick meeting. So I'm going to answer a question that was posed to me last meeting, and it says, what does the region do? So to really understand what the region does, it's important to look at the role of the municipalities and the province and how they interact together. Municipal governments like Niagara Region and its 12 cities and towns deliver services that support the residents of that particular community. Provincial governments, on the other hand, make decisions that affect the entire province. Now, some programs and services are shared with all three groups together. So for municipalities, you are responsible for airports, community centers and libraries, fire services, heritage, art, culture, as well as recreation programs and facilities. Regional government is responsible for police, transit, waste management, wastewater, and watershed conservation. The province of Ontario takes care of hospitals, healthcare delivery, jails and prisons, post-secondary education, training, as well as schools. But there's partnerships between the groups as well. So between the region and each municipality, we all work together to provide clean drinking water, economic development, and emergency planning. Similarly, the region works with the province for GO Transit expansion, Provincial Offences Court, public health and emergency services, social and attainable housing, as well as social and human services. All three of us work together for the environment, land use planning, natural resources, parks and naturalization, as well as roads, locks, and bridges. So the question was, what does the region do? So I looked in further, and here are some of the departments for the region: governance, grants and expenditure, corporate services, community services, public health and emergency services, growth, strategy, and economic development, public works for transportation, public works water and wastewater, public works waste management, court services, regional housing, the NPCA, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, police, as well as transit. But within each of those departments, like at the municipal level, there's lots of sub-departments as well. So I'm taking community services just as an example. So within that group, there is children's services, which include providing licensed daycare centers, the operation of 5 regional children's centers, providing free subsidies for some of these programs, and working with the province on the early on programs. They also take care of homeless services and community engagement, housing services, senior services, and social assistance. So like the municipality, you may have 4 standing committees, but there's a whole lot of other things that go on behind. That's anything I can help you with? Perfect. Thank you very much. Hope to see you all at AMO next week.
Thank you very much, Councillor Seaborn. Up next, we have a first discussion report from Public Works regarding the award of design contract administration for the water main rehabilitation project. Can I get a mover and seconder to put it on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that report DPW 2419 Water Main Rehabilitation Project. And I'll read that later after discussion. Any discussion? Hi, Brandon. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So the report before you this evening is seeking council's authorization to award engineering design and contract administration for the water main rehabilitation project on sections of Lake Street, Olive Street, Ontario Street, and Nels Road North to an engineering consultant, CIMA Plus. This water main work is included as part of the town's 2024 capital project budget, having a budget of around $3 million. Which included the cost for design and construction and contract administration. This firm, CIMA Plus, was retained by the region of Niagara to complete design of sanitary force main work along a similar section of Lake Street that overlaps with the town's water main project. And the region's work that CIMA has undertaken has reached about 90% of the design stage, and they're intend to start the work in 2026. So town staff are looking to take advantage of some of the work already completed by the consultant for the region by having them complete the design and contract admin work for the town's project within the same limits. And at the same time, we're looking to extend their scope of work to the remaining streets that were included as part of the town's 2024 project. So that accordingly, town staff have obtained a proposal from SEMA Plus for the scope of work, and we've reviewed their proposal and are satisfied that it meets our requirements. And we've also confirmed that the town is receiving good value in the fees that have been submitted for that work. Staff feel that there are significant benefits and efficiencies to the town retaining SEMA for this works, and the town's procurement bylaw envisions situations like this and supports that process, the process that staff are using to recommend award of the work to that consultant. Sorry. Hit my cursor and it went down too far. So in these circumstances, we do require council's authorization to award these services, which we're seeking approval for this evening, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Brandon. Questions from council? I guess you did a good enough job explaining. There's no questions. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that report DPW 24-19 Water Main Rehabilitation Project, Olive Street, Lake Street, Ontario Street, and Ellis Road North, awarded design and contract administration date of August 12, 2024 be received, and one that council award the design and contract administration services for the Water Main Rehabilitation Project at Olive Street, Lake Street, Ontario Street, and Ellis Road to SEMA Plus in the amount of $276,605, excluding HST, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have another Public Works report regarding budget amendment to the downtown water main project. Can I get a mover and seconder to put it on the floor? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradsey. Go ahead, Brendan.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. So this report is seeking council's authorization to make some budget amendments related to the downtown water main and complete street improvements project. This project is the latest phase of a multi-year and multifaceted project for reimagining Grimsby's downtown. This current phase requires us to hire an engineering consultant to provide the detailed engineering design for both the water main work and the streetscape improvements. And this would be building upon the concept plan and the design guidelines that were approved by council earlier this year. So earlier this year, staff initiated a public process seeking proposals from qualified consultants to provide design and manage the project to construction. The RFP was posted, or request for proposal was posted publicly on the town's website and on bids and tenders, and it closed in late June. The process resulted in a single proposal submission being received from SEMA Plus. The proposal was vetted by a 3-person evaluation committee, which included evaluation of the written submission and an in-person interview process. Committee was satisfied the consultant's proposal met the town's requirements and recommended award of the work. The scope of the town's request for the proposal included services for both the engineering design phase, so that's pre-construction, and the contract administration, so it's during construction phases of the work. However, our initial budget only approved, our approved budget only included the design component. So we're asking council to amend the budget to allow us to award the full scope of work, so that's both phases, to the successful consultant. The original budget was identified in 2022 with a $300,000 budget. We're asking that budget be amended by a further $300,000 to a total budget of $600,000. And further, we're asking council to make an adjustment to the funding allocation for the project to recognize that we're receiving ICIP grant funding for the water main component of the work. We are recommending the project be funded 50% from the ICIP grant and 50% from the CCBF, formerly known as the gas tax grant. And I'm happy to take any questions on this one as well.
Thank you, Brandon. Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So I'm just trying to understand, we budgeted $300,000, but that was only for the design portion. If we were to include the next step, which is what's included in this contract, if I'm not mistaken, would it come within, because I'm trying to understand how this relates to what we would have budgeted in the first place, because to me, it looks like we're doubling it, but because it includes more work and it changes the scope of the work, how does this meet what we would have budgeted for it had we done it the traditional way in a two-step process, I guess is my question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's a good question. We do multi-year budgets now. In terms of we haven't identified the construction costs and haven't asked for council's approval on the construction costs yet. It's shown in our proposed budget, but it isn't technically approved by council. So the design component we take as a percentage of that total construction cost, and we estimated the design component will cost X, $300,000 or within that range. What we didn't account for was, well, when we're going and hiring this consultant, we have to hire them for both the design component and the construction administration component, which comes during construction, which would be rolled into that larger cost, which will be approved in future budgets. So in order to award it to them now, we need to kind of front end or ask for that approval initially before we can award it. Does that make sense?
Through you, Mayor. So, yes, I guess my question is, why wouldn't that have been included in the first place? Did we not know that that was coming? And the other question, so just so I get this clear, because of the way that you're breaking up the funding of this, it won't have a levy impact, or will it? Because it seems like it's both coming out of different grant columns. And then third question, if you're going to be able to remember them, is it's related to development charges on the projects that are in within that area, because your map shows two significant developments in that area. One is not underway. One has been begun. Are development charges being collected for those sites, and will those go towards? Has the impact of those developments been considered in the development charges and the redevelopment of this infrastructure? That's a lot. I'm sorry.
Started making notes through you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so the first question was relating to why it wasn't captured. It was a mistake on our part. Initially, again, like I said, we initiated, used a value of X percentage to incorporate the design work, didn't realizing that, hey, we'll be awarding the design work and the construction engineering, the contract administration work at the same time. So essentially, we could have went to council and said, hey, we need $7 million right now for all of the work, but we said, let's focus on the design right now, but we missed we didn't include the contract administration. Because we're awarding this contract to an engineering consultant, we can't split up that agreement. We have to put it all under one approval from council. We have to make sure that the money's there if we're committing to pay that consultant. Hopefully I answered that one. The second part was, is there impact to the levy? Right now, again, we're targeting we're asking for the funding to be allocated from the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, I think that's what it's called, ICIP, which is a grant. We have $1.9 million from the federal and the provincial governments to fund that. And the other grant the other fund is from gas tax. So again, not a levy impact. So in this case, no. Where future, the full scope and it comes to construction, we'll have to determine that as we move forward into the project to see how much funding, and we'll be looking at other sources as well of where we can get money on that. If it's possible. The third question was with respect to DCs. So the works are not DC eligible. We did review with our consultant. However, given when you do development charges, we have to determine what is the benefit to existing and what is the growth element. So in this case, the benefit to the existing far outweighs the growth element, so it didn't really make sense for us to include that as with our DC, our last DC study.
Last one, Mayor, I promise, through you. So this, on a $300,000 budget, we only had one tender come back. Is that clear? And so I guess the question is, if we re-tender it, because now it's a $600,000 project, which is what you're recommending, that seems like a significant amount of money for what seems to amount to an untendered project. So I just want to be really clear that you're comfortable with the amount that this is costing, and that it kind of falls, that it matches what we think it would cost, so that way we're not, I trust staff, and I trust that you know a lot better than we do what the value of this is, but it does seem like a lot in what kind of seems like an untendered project, if that makes sense.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. So if I can clarify, when we put the request for proposal out there, we put the request for proposal out to consultants to say, we want you to both design the work and provide contract administration on the work. We ended up only receiving one bid, but the full scope was there. The issue is really in the background, that the fact that staff hadn't identified or hadn't budgeted properly for the contract administration component. So there would be no change in terms of the amount of people that submitted. I will admit that we were surprised that, given the what's the word? The glamorousness, what's the word? We said it earlier. High profile of this project, that we only received, glamorousness is not a word, is it? Given the high profile of the project, we were, interested that we only received one consultant. So, in reviewing and doing our due diligence through the evaluation process, the interviews, and we feel confident that we have a good consultant here. The same consultant had helped on had led the project when we did the Winston Road reconstruction as well. So they're familiar and have a lot of experience working in busy areas and commercial areas. So we felt confident that we're getting a good value here. And again, as we always do when we're looking at the money or the cost or fees that were proposed to us, we always look at them and to make sure that they're within fair market value. And again, we felt comfortable that we're getting good value here. So,
Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question to Mr. Wortman, and it kind of carries on, I guess, from my fellow councillors' questions. So in the first scenario, we were going to fund, half of this from reserves and half of it from a grant. Now we're funding all of it, basically, not touching that reserve and going towards drawing on those two grant programs for it. But ultimately, somewhere down the road, when the whole project comes to us for approval, there may be a drawdown on our reserves still. We just haven't got to that point, I guess, is what it is. So I guess I consider this more a temporary thing, that we have these grants, we're going to make use of them now, and when we know the entire dollars and the scope of the whole project, you'll come back with a funding proposal to us that shows how this will be done. So and I realize that kind of came out of the conversation, so I'm just summarizing it in my head and saying the words out loud as to how I understand that. The second part of it has to do with, the design versus the contract management, and it's almost too bad that it's the same 300,000 estimate. I think that gets a bit confusing because we keep talking about 300,000, and is it the design or is it the contract administration? It's almost too bad that it wasn't like 310, so that we could easily differentiate between the two. But the way I understand it is that second part would have been part of the cost of the whole project anyway. It's not that our staff forgot that it's a part of the project. It's just that we didn't pull it out separately yet because we weren't at that stage of thinking that we were going to be spending money in this fiscal year already. We were thinking it was all going to be in fiscal 2025. So really what we're doing is just kind of advancing it, I'm going to say, by, 4 months, for lack of a better timeline, saying we would have approved it for 2025. It would have been part of that big number, but it makes more sense now to do it now. So my summary, would you say my summary is correct?
Well, I have to say yes. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, very good. I think you nailed it. Just to add and maybe I don't know if I included the reporter in my dialogue, but yes, we will be looking at the full scope of work as we bring this consultant on board, as we nail down to the details of what components are water, what components are the streetscaping component, because the ICPI ICIP grant only applies to the water main component. So we have to separate those costs out, and we're going to have to determine, what is eligible for water, what is eligible for the roadside. Further to that, obviously, that's construction is occurring on a regional road, so we'll be reaching out to our regional partners as well to see what costs fall within their area of responsibility, and we'll also be looking at if there are other grant opportunities out there as well. So all of that will be reviewed through the 2025 budget and refined further as we kind of move forward to the project.
And so with these grants that we're drawing upon, they obviously have very specific requirements. And I guess this is maybe a curiosity question as to how you do things behind the scenes, but obviously the billing that comes from the engineering firm needs to be very specific so that we know to which grant program the costs apply as well, right? So we're thinking it's 50-50, but it could turn out in the end, once you get into the nitty-gritty billings and cost allocations, it could be 49-51 or whatever, but this is just an approximation at this point. Is that correct?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So when I did the initial budget valuation based on a preliminary comp set 2-3 years ago, when I pulled the numbers together, I looked at the water main, I looked at the roads. Oh, that's pretty close to 50-50. Let's use that going forward until we come to the point where we're getting to the nuts and bolts. We're figuring out how much the lights cost versus the water main costs. Then we're going to be able to refine that and say, this portion is more allocated towards roads and this portion is more allocated to the water side of things.
And my last question really is not specifically about this, but just a question, an overriding question. We certainly found, I'm going to say about a year ago, that when we were going out to tender, we were getting bids in that were significantly higher than what we were expecting. Haven't seen it's recently, I would say, from things you've shared with the Public Works Committee and so on. Would you say that issue is sort of settling down, or are you finding that, when you're budgeting and when you're looking at these projects that the costs are kind of more open and that you kind of now have settled into a different area? I realize we have quotes and that this is really what the report is about. So my question is more just a general question as to what are the trends we're seeing? What are we kind of expecting as we get into this?
Yeah, so I think in general, I think it's fair to say that the prices have, we saw a huge change in inflation over, 2022, 23 into 2024. I think we're seeing, again, generally, we're seeing that level off, if not come down. But, that's always subject to what the market drives and how busy the contractors are. So feeling a little bit comfortable that it's stabilized at least, but as we prepare the budget each year, one of the things that we do is we look at the change in inflation and try to account for, is the $2023 or $2024 still a $2024, or do we have to amend it to increase it to reflect inflation or the changes in CPI? So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And related to that, do we think that the fact that we only got one bid, do you think that's a factor of just how busy the engineering firms are? Or, what's the take of you and your staff as to how we ended up with just one, albeit obviously a qualified firm that we've had experience with and that the region does? So we're talking about quality here still, but just still so unusual to only have one. Do you have any feel for why that is?
I think you're right. I think the initial comments for our team was, is it the market's really busy now? Everyone's kind of swamped. Is it, labor has been a concern over the last few years? Is that playing into consultants' ability to keep the work moving forward? That could be a possibility as well. So I don't know if we have an exact reason, but I think that's where we're kind of, the feel or gut feel is it's busy right now. Coming out of COVID, we are still trying to catch up. We're still trying to navigate the new way of doing things, the new yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. But anyways, you know, it is a challenge for us, and things do. I guess maybe where I was going is we're finding that things take longer, and we're kind of figuring that out as we go. Is making sure we're setting realistic timelines and what we're trying to bite off in terms of our work plans each year. So hopefully I answered that question.
Thank you, Brandon. Any further questions? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolved that report DPW 24-20 Downtown Water Main and Complete Street Improvement Project Budget Amendment dated August 12, 2024 be received, and one that Council approve an amendment to the Downtown Water Main and Complete Street Improvements Project budget from $300,000 to $600,000 to allow the design phase and the contract administration phase of the consultant's assignment to be awarded under one contract, and two, that the budget amendment be funded 50% from the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant and 50% from the Canada Community Building Fund, CCFBF, and three, that the funding allocation approved as part of the 2022 budget be amended to 50% from the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP, grant, and 50% from the Canada Community Building Fund. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Brandon. Next is a report from Bylaw regarding mice and rats removal rebate program. Can I get a mover and seconder to put it on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, seconded by Councillor Bradsey. Discussion? Actually, would you, Henry, you come up first, and then we'll have the discussion after that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So town staff looked into a potential mice and rats removal rebate program. So town staff started off by kind of reviewing our current practices. So current practices do involve advising residents of our clean yards and property standards bylaws that do pertain to a lot of information that assists residents with keeping mice and rats from the property, so preventing them from even coming onto the property. So when doing that local area municipal scan, looking at those other municipalities and looking at the Niagara region, so just under half of the municipalities within the Niagara region actually had a program in place. So more recently was the City of St. Catharines, who ended their program due to the sharp decline and just the amount of staff taken to run the program. So keeping that in mind, and then also kind of following up with Public Health, and then kind of looking at Public Health Canada, they kind of mirrored that same saying that prevention is key. Essentially, if the residents do their work to prevent them from making homes on your property, therefore by abiding to our clean yards and property standards bylaws, these mice or rats would be essentially moving on to other food sources and or shelter areas where they can potentially house. And then with that, some benefits to the program we did find it would alleviate some of the financial stress put on residents for hiring a Ontario licensed exterminator, but some of the main concerns we found was that the amount of staff time taken for the program itself and the actual benefit at the end versus what we're currently doing, which only took about approximately 30 minutes of staff time, and then with a potential program would take about 2, maybe even more hours of staff time. So looking over 50 applications, let's say in the first year, that's a pretty big gap in time. So it's about 3 weeks worth of work. So with our current model, we do provide that for free, and we do essentially begin an investigation into it and provide those input to either neighboring properties or the property itself to give them those avenues under the clean yards and property standards. For example, cutting your grass, removing refuse, which is basically garbage or dilapidated materials, and or other food sources. So essentially using our current program would be more beneficial to the residents and alleviating and ensuring that that bylaw enforcement staff time is spent more efficiently.
Thank you, Henry. I see Councillor Sharwal, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan. So I'm through Mayor Jordan. This is to Henry. Henry, as you know, I had some issues with some residents experiencing this before, and so part of the issue had to do with the fact that the property owner and the tenants are disconnected. So with this, first of all, I'm wondering if you can provide clarification as to whether it's just going to be the property owner who's notified if there's an issue. I think this was on page 80 of your report. It just says the property owner is notified, but it doesn't say anything about the tenant. Can you clarify that first?
For sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it would be tenant and property owner. Just to clarify that we would talk to both parties in these situations so that we can try to mediate those situations to ensure that we alleviate the concerns of the community.
Okay, that's perfect. Thanks. So these are just some general comments just from, having to deal with this in the past. As you know, the situation was very stressful for everybody involved. So anytime we're working with people facing these kind of issues that are, embarrassing, they're very overwhelming, very stressful. Also, it causes quite a burden financially on the homeowner as well. Just if we can continue to communicate as much as possible and even hold their hand through the whole process, I know that it would probably alleviate a lot of the staff time. If you just go through it thoroughly the first time around, then there's, you don't have all the phone calls in and the follow-up. So I commend you for how you dealt with the situation. I had to help somebody through, but if we can just continue to provide that, extra communication and hand-holding, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. That's it.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. They seem to fall into two categories here. Sort of general mess on your property that can attract rats, and when you have major developments, then, the whole group starts scurrying all around the perimeter of these developments. Is there any way that we can ask developers to put up a kind of rat-specific security bond so that, if the infestation is caused by a major development having, upset the habitat, that it doesn't fall necessarily on the resident to do it. And maybe there's a way that they can, deal directly with the developer if it seems to be a developer-related problem. And it's easy to know because, if you are around the perimeter of that development and all of a sudden you're getting rats, it's most likely coming from where the work is being done. So even if we could ask them to put up a security bond to assist residents should there be a problem. The other stuff, well, people got to take care of it themselves.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the report does outline that, and also in speaking with St. Catharines, that construction projects do not attract these concerns. So the concerns are already there. Essentially, the redevelopment of an area will actually just move them to different areas of the municipality. So, for example, in the city of St. Catharines, when the old GM plant was knocked down, essentially those rodents were already there and they just get displaced and they just go further into the community finding shelter and homes. And then that's where with residents doing these prevention methods, that's where we can push them to areas outside of the residential areas to ensure that they continue moving on to areas more of a rural landscape. But definitely the question with it going back to the developers, we can bring that back to staff and have that reviewed.
Perhaps I wasn't clear, but I think when developers come into a vacant property, start to dig it up, that's when habitats get disturbed, and that's when they start scurrying to neighborhood areas. So I do think that developers need to be involved in this aspect because, in a sense, they're creating the problem through the development. So, it would be good if they would be able to assist in helping residents when that happens.
For sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's definitely something that we can speak to with our development staff to ensure that we have that reviewed. Essentially, just making sure that they are displacing them properly.
Councillor Korsanji.
Thank you. Through Chair, I'm just going to add to Councillor Vardy. So this actually originated from the construction of the hospital, and the disturbance of the construction of the hospital created a rat infestation for the residents that live surrounding the hospital. So while that population might have already been there, then all of a sudden it was the residents' issue, and the residents were spending a fortune constantly calling an exterminator, because if only one person does it, then they just come back and they multiply and they multiply. So I too would like to see something put in place so when we have situations when we're relocating a rat population to residents and there's nowhere rural to actually move them to, that the resident doesn't bear the cost of that due to the development. But I do like everything that's in here for when it's, resident issues and stuff like that. I think proactive. I know you guys have been very proactive with the Clean Yards bylaw and assisting and stuff like that. So if we could just maybe part of it go back to staff and then have a plan when we have something construction like the hospital or like a big development on a vacant property, just so there is an action plan already in place so that this doesn't happen to residents.
Councillor DeFoley.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Yes, I was just going to raise the point that my fellow councillor did, that of course this problem arose when the construction started for the hospital. But one thing that I've noticed from owning a business and being downtown a lot and around many of these buildings is that many of the commercial enterprises, including our own properties downtown, have those lovely black boxes out that are placed every so many 100 feet around the buildings that contain food for the rats to take home to stop them from multiplying, I will say. And I would imagine, knowing the hospital, they probably had those around their property too. So it is a mystery where these vermin live, because certainly a lot of the businesses in town in the commercial and industrial properties do proactively do this already around their properties and buildings. The restaurants do, many of them do, doing as much as they can to make sure these lovely critters don't, come to live at their properties too much. So it is a bit of a mystery, sort of, as to how you do this. And so quite honestly, although we keep talking about the developers, it's really the property owners. The property owner in this case was the hospital. And when they started construction, that's when the rats that I guess were living in the grass and in and around the bushes and so on, who hadn't partaken of the lovely little tidbits that were already left in the black boxes around their building for them, decided to go seek shelter elsewhere. So I find it still a mystery, but I do agree with you that it really is up to each of us to make sure that we're not leaving food outside, that, we're not actively feeding all the rest of the critters out there, and doing our own part first. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
I just want to add that I know that many contractors are aware of what they can do on the prevention side when they start working. So maybe that's just something when we're going through our approval for site or whatever, that we, make sure there's a box on rats we can check off. Okay? Yeah, home for Ratatouille.
Seeing no further questions, moved by Councillor Korsanji, second by Councillor Bradsey, resolve that report BYL 24-05 Mice and Rats Removal Rebate Program dated August 12, 2024 be received, and that staff continue to assist residents with concerns and increase the educational material on the website. All in favor? That's carried. Can I get a mover and seconder to put the first planning report on the floor for discussion? And do any members of council have questions that require being asked in closed session, specifically with regards to identifiable individuals and or potential litigation? If there are none, council will only be discussing these reports in open session, not in camera. If there are any items, discussions in open session that can take place, we will table the vote until after the closed session. So are there any open session questions? All right, it sounds like everyone has closed session items, so we'll discuss it in close. So I'll just get a mover and seconder for the first one. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Bradsey. All right. And the second item, need a mover and seconder for that as well. Councillor DeFlavio, Councillor Frake.
So we can just move on to resolution.
All right, so we'll deal with those two in close later in the meeting. So now we'll move on to resolutions. At the last council meeting, Councillor Bradsey brought forward a notice of motion regarding lease-free study. Councillor Bradsey has moved it. Is there a seconder to get it on the floor for discussion? Councillor Frake. Discussion. Councillor Bradsey.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you. I just wanted to thank staff for the report back. I think it's time we as a council, especially with the Parks Master Plan ongoing, that we get serious about dog parks. I know I'm knocking on the doors at election. I think it's at least about 1-3 doors. You're getting greeted by a friendly fellow. So I think we made a lot of promises to the dogs of Grimsby, and I'd like to see us deliver on them.
Sarah, are you here? Do you want to make any comments?
And Mayor Jordan and Council, yes, I am here. I don't have much more to say beyond what I wrote in the response that staff had, but we did, just to summarize it quickly, I suppose, we did ask our consultant team in the Parks Master Plan what the cost would be to do some further work on the Unleashed Free study. There is some of that included already in the Parks Master Plan, but certainly the depth of the request here was a little bit beyond that scope. So we did provide a cost to that. It would be $12,000. The timing is quite good to weave that into the project, as they're right around the time that they're starting to do more of their findings and advancing that work. And staff do think that it would be valuable work to undertake.
Thank you, Sarah. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Howe.
This will hit the right buttons. What are we going to do then if we're going to incorporate more costs? Because obviously off-leash is going to take away from active areas unless everybody wants to pick up after their little buddies. But what about our licensing of the animals? Should we be looking at that as part of this as well? And I don't think a park master plan would look into it, but we're asking for more amenities, if you wish, for off-leash dogs. It's going to be extra costs. How are we going to cover them?
All right. I think that was directed to you, Sarah.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. I wasn't sure if it was directed to me or not. The intention wasn't to necessarily look at licensing fees, but we certainly can ask them to speak to examples that might exist as to how we are addressing the cost for leash free. I don't think the scope of work is entirely going to be about more dog parks, but it could be how we use different spaces differently as well, how we're programming them, but certainly it could be additional fees. So we can certainly ask for those requests. And, again, the licensing fees aren't part of that and don't currently contribute towards the dog parks per se, but there may be some examples out there that we can ask the consultants to comment on.
Thank you. Councillor Howe, I wasn't sure, but I was wondering if you were going to bring back forward a cat licensing program to increase fees. So, Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So if we're already doing a part, this is to Ms. Sweeney, if we're already in the middle of a Parks Master Plan and we're doing a comprehensive review of our parks, I'm just trying to understand why it would cost more within that master plan to look at leash-free dog parks. It seems like it's something that we should be doing anyway, so I don't understand the additional cost. So if you could explain, you know, if our team that we've hired to do a review of our parks is polling the audience, shouldn't that discussion be part of what they're, you know, and if it comes through what people are asking for in their consultation with the public and with council, wouldn't that already be incorporated into the master plan? Why do we need an additional $12,000 to do something we're already doing, I guess is my question.
Sure, thanks for the question through the mayor. So in the master plan, they basically are looking at how many leash-free dog parks do we have and basically commenting on that. They're not going into the depth that Councillor Bradzy's notice of motion had to get into things like types and sizes and some of the other specifics. There's questions in there about volunteers and businesses stewarding some of the areas. There was just a lot more depth in the scope that was being asked for. There are other municipalities have done this as well, where they do more of a focus study. So it's just going into a greater detail than the Parks Master Plan would go into. The one thing I would say as well that is beneficial to this is as our community is changing and our housing complements are changing, the needs and uses of the dog parks, I think, are changing as well. So I do think it is good to do a little bit more of a focused look at how do we want to program these things a little bit differently. So it's a little bit more of an overarching, I guess, piece is what I'm saying. This ask here is doing a much deeper dive into leash-free dog parks than would be part of just the whole master plan.
Any further questions? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Bradzy, second by Councillor Frake. Whereas many, Councillor Charwa.
Thank you. Yeah, so while I commend this addition, I think we're starting to go off a little bit where our priorities were at the beginning. So just a reminder that we deferred the 40 Mile Creek Bridge project it's in dire need of repair. It has been for years. And we deferred it over because it was going over $90,000 in the budget. So although this is nice I think our priority should be to fix the things that actually need repair. We do already have a dog-free, like a beautiful dog park already. And there's also an area that two areas that Ward 4 residents also use for, to take their dogs off leash. So this isn't quite a priority. And I think, you know, tapping into more of a budget when we've already taken away from things that our residents are going to see that, you know, should have been addressed and they haven't been addressed. So I think that should be the report. That should be the priority. I would like a recorded vote for this as well, please. Thank you.
Councillor Bradzy? Seeing no further questions or comments, moved by Councillor Bradzy, second by Councillor Frake. Whereas many residents in the town are dog owners and voice the desire for more pet-friendly spaces and park improvements, and whereas the town of Grimsby is currently undergoing a parks master plan, therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to conduct a comprehensive leash-free study as part of the Parks Master Plan. The study will outline strategies and approaches as part of the development of an evidence-based best practice approach to dog parks and leash-free areas in Grimsby. This includes, but is not limited to, a review of international best practices for design, signage, rules, accessibility, shade, shelter, surface materials, fencing, and dog-specific amenities. B, a process to proactively identify and fund new leash-free areas where most needed, reflective of population distribution and development, and in balance with other park functions and uses such as tandem usage with sports fields not in use. C, a process to identify and fund priority repairs and improvements, including design improvements to existing parks and leash-free areas. And a process for considering the introduction of fencing where appropriate to address safety concerns. D includes accommodations for all types and sizes of leash-free areas, including those in urban settings with limited parkland available. E, potential opportunities for volunteers and businesses to steward these areas, and ambassador programs to promote responsible dog area use and promote responsible dog ownership. Councillor Charwa has asked for a recorded vote. Vote on your e-scribe, please.
I can't access my e-scribe from here, so I'm a no. Can somebody confirm that they got that?
Yes, we realize you're a no.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that is carried. Now, since Councillor Bradley's motion was approved, I need a mover and seconder for a budget amendment to fund the leash-free study. Mover, Councillor Bradley, seconder, Councillor Frank. Moved by Councillor Bradley, second by Councillor Frank. Resolved that report DC 24-41 leash-free study response to notice of motion dated August 12, 2024 be received for information, and that council approves a budget amendment of $12,000 for the leash-free study to be funded from the development charges growth studies, $8,544, and parkland dedication reserve, $3,456. All in favor?
Recorded
All right.
vote as well, please.
All right. Recorded vote has been called by Councillor Charwa. So vote on your e-scribe.
I'm a no as well.
All right, that is carried. At the last council meeting, Councillor Cristanchi brought forward a notice of motion regarding the accessibility of Casablanca Park. Councillor Cristanchi has moved it. There's a seconder. We need a seconder to get it on the floor. Councillor DeFlavio. Sarah, you ready to comment on this?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So staff did prepare a memo just responding to the notice of motion, and do fully recognize that those rubber surfacing is often preferred in some playgrounds, but did want to acknowledge that the surfacing that is there is AODA compliant. Again, this is something that I think we will, we've asked our Parks Master Plan people to comment on as well in terms of some of the amenities and the types of services we're providing in our parks. So there may be an opportunity to further address this in that as well. And beyond that, I'm hoping the memo responds appropriately to the notice of motion.
Councillor Cristanchi.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I do commend you, Sarah, and your team on the AODA compliance. I read through the report, and I did ask the consultant about the wood chips and stuff like that, and they are considered compliant. So from an AODA perspective, the park looks phenomenal on paper. The problem that has arisen is the practicality for the use of children with disabilities. So I had a family go to the park, and their young child is in a wheelchair, and the ramp to the park was inaccessible because the town truck was parked in the way. And then the wood chips, the child was not able to self-propel through the wood chips. So while I understand it is deemed accessible on a practical level, it's not for the children to be able to go through. I think part of the problem is we're talking about children in wheelchairs and may not have the strength that an adult does to be able to push through. The one ramp going into the one playground that sort of goes, there's a little bit of a lip, and then the two ramps go down sideways around the circle. They felt like that was sort of dangerous because the child was going to fall off the side and perhaps a railing, or because you have to make a sharp turn to actually go down into the playground. It goes into the smaller playground. So that was seen as a bit of an issue. Their child was only able to use, the swing was a big hit. The slide was a big hit, but the child had no way of the wheelchair getting up to, like, the parent was not able, they had to take the child out of the wheelchair and carry them up the structure to be able to go down the slide. The orange spinny thing was fantastic. That was really only one of the only thing the child was able to use independently. So I think although we're compliant on the ODA level, it's really not going to do us any good if the children can't actually use the things in the playground. So what I would like to see is perhaps more communication on all the accessible features that you did put in it. I mean, we should be bragging about the things that you have done and accomplished so that the public knows, hey, there's this swing, there's accessible bathrooms, there's the beach mat. So the public knows that all those things are there, but maybe we need more public consultation on the practicality of certain things so we can put the right things into the playground that the children can actually use instead of us as adults sort of guessing and going, okay, this is compliant, but can they actually use it? Would they actually use it? So that's sort of what I would like to see in a reevaluation is maybe some public consultation. Ask the families that are using it, how can we improve this? It doesn't necessarily mean resurfacing the whole thing, but maybe there are some quick fixes that we can make and then going forward, things that we know that we can do. So that's sort of where I was coming from. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I just have one. If we rubberized everything instead of wood chips, would there be a significant cost for that? Sarah?
Through the mayor, it is quite expensive. We estimated the cost for rubberizing that surface and that playground alone to be about $300,000. It's also quite more expensive to replace. So the nice thing with wood chips is you do want to always maintain a certain amount of wood chips to make it safe to use. So over time, you can add the fill of the wood chips a little bit easier. Well, I should say a lot easier than the rubber surfacing. So there is certainly a more significant cost. You know, one option might be looking at a few specific parks, or maybe we go to a greater extent for accessibility in those parks. You know, that might be one approach we can take. And again, I appreciate the councillor's comments. Happy to take that away with the team, but also with the master plan team as well to talk about what some of the maybe best options are to do this in a way that we can, you know, manage financially, but also that we're providing some good services to these families as well.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions or comments, moved by Councillor Korsanji, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Whereas there has been community concerns that the new waterfront playground recently constructed on Casablanca waterfront is not fully accessible to children with disabilities, and whereas it is our responsibility to provide an inclusive and accessible environment for all children in our community, and whereas this initiative will demonstrate our dedication to equality and accessibility, ensuring that every child has the opportunity to enjoy and benefit from the playground. Therefore, be it resolved that we immediately reevaluate and correct any accessible needs of the new playground and immediately implement any necessary corrections. All in favor? Yeah, Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I guess my concern is with the very last paragraph, and based upon staff's response. So the last paragraph of the proposed resolution said that resolved we immediately reevaluate, and I have no problems with that, and correct any accessibility needs and immediately implement the necessary corrections. And I guess, you know, even hearing the potential cost of a rubberized surface and so on, the wording of the resolution worries me because it's a very open-ended resolution that basically is saying to staff, reevaluate, correct immediately, and go forward, right? And we really have no idea of what that means nor what the costs would be. And so I hear Ms. Sweeney when she says that if there are some small things that can be done immediately, for sure, they would be open to that. But the resolution itself is so open-ended in that last paragraph, then that's what my concern is. So I guess my question to those who moved it is, would you be happy with immediately re-evaluating and asking staff to come back, with two sets of potential implementations, those that can be done short-term in a cost-effective way, and those perhaps that are longer-term, so that we can get our arms around the extent of the issue.
Councillor Howe.
Through you, Chair, and possibly to Councillor Costangi. But would it be appropriate, or if you were able to make some time, and I understand that's at a premium, but to meet with Director Sweeney or delegate to go over them, because what you were describing, unless your hands, you're right there, then for me, it's hard to visualize. So that way you'd be able to say that, and maybe, as Councillor DeVoley, who are you? About, the immediacy. We can maybe do some quick things, but I think we probably could really use your eyes.
Councillor Corsangi.
Thank you, through Chair. Yeah, so with the reevaluation, that's what I would like to see is a team meet with residents who have those needs. And I mean, we really just described the wheelchair needs, but we have many children with autism that have different needs. So I think what we need is a collective to sort of go to the playground and say, hey, we've identified this. I'm fully accepting of the amendment that a report comes back and then everybody can speak to, and then, a sort of short-term, long-term plan. I'm okay with that amendment. I just, and I would be, fully willing to go to meet with Sarah and the team and any residents that would like to as well, too. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if the councillor is okay with it, we will do the reevaluation, meet with all the public residents, and maybe we'll consider the financial piece through our 2025 budget and have that further conversation then.
Mayor, if I may just speak to that, I'm just thinking that if there's something quick and easy we can do in the next couple of months before the snow comes, if ever it comes, if there's something that, is relatively, I don't know what the word is, fast and easy or something like that, or cheap and friendly that we can do, I'm certainly open to that. I think it's anything over, pick a dollar number, anything over, $10,000 or whatever that I'm thinking really needs to then have a more fulsome report and come back to us. But if it's a fast and easy fix, my thoughts are that I'm perfectly okay with that. Mm-hmm.
Councillor Sharwa, then Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just wanted to kind of piggyback off Councillor DeVoley. I think that's wise that we're getting some numbers as well. And I'm just wondering if there's also being consideration as far as, we don't need to have rubberize the area completely, but even just considering if there's a path for children to kind of follow through to access. So that would cut down on the cost. I don't know specifically the areas you're speaking of, but if that's something to take into consideration that would bring it down in cost, then that would be great too.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So I'm just not sure what we're asking for here, because the staff response says we meet AODA standards. We had a third party come in and review it that said that, they list the multiple things they saw on site, floor level play events, bucket seats, swings, ramps to beach access, accessible parking spaces. It seems like we've already, the question was asked and answered, so I don't know what we're asking further, unless we're talking about specialized play equipment for specific special needs. I'm all for accessibility, and I just don't think that whatever we're asking for, I feel like it's already been answered in the report, and we've already met AODA standards. Is there like a AODA plus that we're trying, I don't know what the next level that we're trying to achieve is, and what the goal of this is. So is it every park in town? Is it this specific park? Because it came as a result of the Casablanca Beach Park. Are we talking about every park in town now? Because that seems like it'll have a significant financial impact, having every park reviewed. Where are we going with this, I guess, is my question.
Well, I think we can probably make this resolution much better just by changing the last sentence and changing it to, therefore be it resolved that staff reevaluate and correct any potential accessibility needs of the new playground and report back on costs. Like, if the mover and seconder is happy with that, I think that works. So, all right. It seems Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you. Just to kind of piggyback off Councillor DeFlavio, I kind of still feel like that was encompassed in this report. Staff did evaluate, they did meet standards. So I'm really not sure what we're reevaluating and what action item we're going to have come out of this. I'm all for exceeding minimum standards, but let's not forget this is a brand new $4.3 million park that does meet standards. So what are we going back to? Are we reconstructing trails?
Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So the goal is to have all children play at our playgrounds. This $4 million playground should be accessible to everybody. I'm not asking for every playground, but that eventually is what's going to have to happen by law. So the goal of this is to allow all children to be able to play. Yes, it's compliant on paper, but the community is telling us their children cannot play there. So, a reevaluation and safety issue obviously was identified with the child potentially going off the side in their wheelchair. These things, I think, need to be immediately evaluated. All I'm asking for is, a reevaluation of the practicality of our accessibility needs, and then staff come back and we make a plan going forward. I think that is a little thing to ask for the children that have, and the parents that have called this out and said, listen, this is not good enough for our children to be able to use. So I think we need to listen, and this is a small ask, really. Thank you.
Sarah, did you want to comment?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Jordan. And I think Councillor Korstanji just described it in a way that I would maybe like to approach it as well, if that's agreeable. She's raised a few concerns today. I'd like to take those away. And certainly if there is an existing concern right now that is a safety issue or one that we can easily fix, such as mentioned with the ramping, we would like to do that quickly. I think some of the bigger items and even meeting with the residents will take obviously a little bit of time. And again, I think we can also use the Parks Master Plan as part of that too, to decide how do we best do this and make sure we can take a bit of a consistent approach. So if there's a way to approach it that way, that I think would, I'm hoping would cover all things.
Thank you.
The one thing, sorry, I'll just, if I can, is, modifying existing playgrounds may not be as easy as we'd have to really look at to see what we could do there. And that's where I don't want to overpromise what we could do quickly. So if we could take those quick wins away, our staff are happy to do that. And then, have a little more time to evaluate some of the bigger asks and items and see what makes most sense, whether it's that park or potentially even another park.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, moved by Councillor Korstanji. All right, Councillor Sharwa.
Mayor Jordan, thank you. I just, when you were asking those questions of clarification, I agree with Councillor Korstanji. I think for myself, I'd like to be able to see children be able to, be able to use the wheelchair they don't have the same strength that their parents do, as she's mentioned, so that the wood chips aren't cutting it as far as propelling themselves and getting up on the ramps. So yes, they may need help of a parent going down the slide. I think that's probably a bigger thing. And, but being able to just use your wheelchair to get to point A and B would be nice. That's the main thing for me. And again, this is not for every park right now. At this point, we're just looking at this brand new park. There's obviously going to be some, we're going to have to look back at some of the other ones for compliance issues later, but we're asking for this park right now. So that's it. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, moved by Councillor Corsangi, second by Councillor DeFlavio, where there has been community concerns that the new waterfront playground recently constructed on Casablanca waterfront is not fully accessible to children with disabilities, and where it is our responsibility to provide an inclusive and accessible environment for all children in our community, and whereas this initiative will demonstrate our dedication to equity and accessibility, ensuring that every child has the opportunity to enjoy and benefit from the playground. Therefore, be it resolved that staff reevaluate and correct any potential accessibility needs on the new playground and report back on costs. All in favor? That's carried. All right, can I have a mover and seconder to receive the memo regarding Casablanca Park? Moved by Councillor Corsangi, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Corsangi, second by Councillor Vardy, resolved that the staff memorandum regarding Casablanca Park accessibility be received. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, there are three notices of motion. First, Councillor Bradzi, can you please read your notice of motion?
Yes, Mayor, through you. It's entitled Proposed Acquisition or Disposition of Property. So as whereas Section 239, 2C of the Ontario Municipal Act states, a meeting or part of a meeting may be enclosed to the public if the subject matter being considered is a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and whereas Section 239, 2K of the Ontario Municipal Act states a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by behalf of the municipality or board. Therefore, be it resolved that council moves into closed session to discuss the potential acquisition or disposition of property along the waterfront trail. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be considered at the September 9th council meeting, and I'll read the detailed meeting in closed session later tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Bradzi. Councillor Shawa, can you please read your motion?
Yes. Sorry, are you bringing it up? No, okay, so I'll just read it off my paper here. Whereas the Municipal Act 2001 provides the framework within which municipal integrity commissioners are appointed and carry out their functions, and whereas every municipality must establish a code of conduct for members of council and local boards, Section 223.21, and appoint an integrity commissioner or use the services of an integrity commissioner from another municipality, Section 223.3, 1.1 to 1.2, integrity commissioners must function in an independent manner and report directly to municipal council, Section 223.31, and whereas the Town of Grimsby Code of Conduct 2074 does not mirror sections of the Municipal Act 2001 on all matters pertaining to integrity commissioner complaints and creates ambiguity in procedure in which transparency matters, and whereas the Town of Grimsby recognizes the importance of protecting the human rights in Canada. Therefore, be it resolved that all issues coming before the Integrity Commissioner must be dealt with in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001. The Municipal Act 2001 will take precedence over the Town of Grimsby Code of Conduct 2074 on all matters pertaining to Integrity Commissioner complaints. Be it further resolved that all matters coming before the Integrity Commissioner must be dealt with in accordance with the Canadian Human Rights Act of 1977 and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms of 1982. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the September 9th, 2024 council meeting.
Councillor Bradzi, you have a second notice of motion.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you. This one's titled Events Task Force Committee. Whereas council has made investments in facilitating events within the Town of Grimsby, the the aim of enhancing community spirit, quality of life for residents, and fostering a vibrant local economy. And whereas the creation of a dedicated events task force committee could provide focused attention and expertise to the planning and execution of town events and a proactive approach to planning multiple events, while also leveraging community volunteers and public-private partnerships. Therefore, be it resolved that staff prepare a report outlining the feasibility and resource implications of establishing an events task force committee in 2025 to oversee planning and execution of town events, including but not limited to a Canada Day long weekend festival. Be it further resolved that staff or the new established committee develop a yearly Grimsby event schedule outlining potential competing events outside or inside Grimsby, timelines needed to plan the events, venue or park restraints, and resource requirements. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be considered at the September 9th, 2024 council meeting.
Thank you. Now we move to correspondence. Can I get a mover and seconder for the Childhood Cancer Awareness Month proclamation? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korstanji. Whereas over 800 children under the age of 15 are diagnosed with cancer each year in Canada, and whereas 1 in 330 children will be diagnosed with cancer before their 18th birthday, and whereas childhood cancer is the #1 cause of death by disease of Canadian children, and whereas there are over 200 types of childhood cancers, not including subtypes and mutations, and whereas childhood cancer places a tremendous financial burden on families, and whereas over 75% of childhood cancer survivors live with at least one chronic health condition, and a third of these are severe or life-threatening, and whereas little is known about what causes childhood cancer which limits the opportunities for prevention, and whereas additional awareness and funding for childhood cancer is needed, as only 4 to 6 cents from every research dollar goes towards childhood cancer research, and whereas annually September is officially recognized as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month by the province of Ontario, therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Jeff Jordan, do hereby proclaim September 2024 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Howe has requested to endorse the Town of Lincoln's resolution to call on the province for increased funding for public libraries and community museums. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Bradsey. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolve that correspondence from the Town of Fort Erie and Town of Lincoln regarding increased funding for public libraries and community museums be received and endorsed. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the remaining correspondence? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the following correspondence be received. Niagara Region proposed amendments to the Niagara Escarpment Planning and Development Act, Niagara Region Development Charges Act exemption for affordable and attainable residential units, Niagara Region, Niagara Poverty Reduction Strategy, Social Assistance Rates, NPCA, Watershed Natural Assets Analysis and Valuation, NPCA, Integrated Watershed Monitoring and Reporting, Town of Lincoln Joint Fire Services Advisory Committee appointment, Town of Lincoln endorsement of Town of Grimsby Joint Fire Services Advisory Committee resolution. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 24-59 and 24-60, and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Next meeting of council is scheduled for September 9th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Now we're moving into closed session. Can I have a mover and seconder to move into close? Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Howe. Resolve that council meet in closed session under Section 2392E of the Municipal Act, where a closed meeting is held if the subject matter being considered is litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Section 2392F of the Municipal Act, where a closed session meeting is held, subject matter is being considered as advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose pertaining to ongoing bylaw matters. Section 2392C of the Municipal Act, where a closed session meeting is held, if the subject matter being considered is a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. All in favor to go into closed? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for the closed session direction? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the legal counsel proceed as directed in closed session. All in favor? That's carried. Now we have the first motion for the Cortland, moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Bradsey. Can we vote on that on e-scribe? Well, we can do it on show of hands if no one's changing their vote. Or if everyone remembers how they voted.
Maybe just do it by show of hands, that's fine.
All right.
We can,
All in favor?
I think we
I
need
was
to
in
do it.
favor. I think we have to do e-scribe because Councillor Sharwa?
Sorry, which one was this for that we're voting on?
Cortland, the first one.
Yes.
All right, that's carried. Now the second resolution, moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Frake. We can do that on e-scribe as well. Councillor Sharwa? We couldn't hear you, Councillor Sharwa.
This is for the second one, correct?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
All right, that was carried. All right, can I have a mover and seconder to approve the confirming bylaw? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 2461 and that same be read a first time, considered and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Good night, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.